Okay, I'm recording. I like that picture. That's a good picture of me there. What do you think, people? Do I look presidential as a presidential candidate? But tonight, we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the truth in history and what really is the truth. Now, a lot of you there argue about John Hanson being president, first president of the United States of America. Some of you who've gone to school later than 69 probably was taught that George Washington was the first president of the United States. And that's really not correct. But we're going to take a look at it and see why it's not correct. And why John Hanson is the first president of the United States of America. What we have to do is come to the conclusion, when did the country, the United States of America, become a country? Did it become a country after the ratification of the Constitution? Or was it before the ratification of the Constitution? This is what we have to look at. Some people say we became a country with the Declaration of Independence in 1776. Is that when the United States of America became the United States of America? Or was it at the end of the Revolutionary War when the United States became the United States of America and the Articles of Confederation was written? Or was it after the Constitution was ratified in 1789? That is the real question that you have to ask yourself to answer who was the first president. Because if our country became a country in 1776, July 4th, the Declaration of Independence, then George Washington is not the first president of the United States of America. He is the first congressional president and the first president elected directly by the people, sort of. But is he the first president? No, he's actually the 8th. Now, if you say, well, no, we had the Revolutionary War, and then winning the Revolutionary War, we became a country, then the United States of America became a country and started out with the Articles of Confederation, which is a stumbling block or a growing block at which the country was developed. They knew what kind of country they wanted, they just didn't know how to get there. And with the Articles of Confederation, our people of this country found out all the things that were really needed that they had left out. And they tried to add them all in. That's why the Convention Center was not there to write the Constitution, but was there to perform and repair the Articles of Confederation. But it couldn't be done. They realized that the Articles of Confederation, the way it was written, could not, because there was things that were missing that they needed, that they were already doing. For example, the office of the president was already established and functioning. Well, you might say it was kind of illegal then, but you see, if you look at the Constitution, it is illegal then too, because they weren't there to write the Constitution, but to fix the Articles of Confederation. Oh, wait a minute. The Constitution we consider as legal. Then the office of president, while being filled that they had found that they needed, was still illegal. It was taken on an authority that was not granted in the Articles of Confederation, but was found necessary and had to be. And then, therefore, John Hanson was the first president. Now, is John Hanson really, could you say he's not elected by the people? Well, let's see how he actually got into the office. He was elected. What happened is the people elected the delegates for their Continental Congress, and the Continental Congress elected the president. That's how it was. Now, today, the people go and they elect who they want for the president. Well, actually, they don't. They elect how they want the electoral delegates to vote. But the electoral delegates actually vote for the president. Sounds kind of interesting, doesn't it? Sounds very familiar. Okay, also, let's still go back to the original problem. If we want to say George Washington was the first president, then we have to say, well, then we got to say from the Constitution. Well, if we look at that, then we got to deny the existence of the Confederate States in the Civil War. They don't exist. They weren't real. They declared their independence just like we did as the country, United States. Then they fought a war. And they lost the war, and of course the Confederate States were abolished. But if we use the standards at the Constitution, then we have to say, well, then the Confederate States never existed. Because they never won the war in the first place. They even write up their own Constitution. So therefore, they never existed. Of course, that would be a big denial of something, a big slap in the face of the American history. Now, we deny the existence of the Confederate States, then we almost have to deny the Civil War was fought as a civil war. So how do we define the United States of America? I feel we have one of two ways. One, from the Declaration of Independence, or two, somewhere during the Revolutionary War to the end of the Revolutionary War, when the 13 colonies recognized themselves as 13 independent states and declared themselves the United States of America. And that's when the country was formed. They didn't say the Confederation. They said the United States of America. Though we were under the Articles of Confederation and then to be evolved into the Constitution, which it really was. It evolved into the Constitution. Our presidents wrote, like John Hanson, that there was a court needed to settle disputes between states and other disagreements, and thus the Supreme Court. And the executive branch was set up by John Hanson himself. So as you see, where do you draw the line? Who was the first president? No one will disagree that George Washington was the first president under the Constitution of the United States. No one will disagree that George Washington was the first publicly elected president. But the fact is, he still was not the first president of the United States of America. He was the 8th. I know some people don't want to admit that. But you got to understand, he was our father of our country. We have to give him some glory other than others. We do, by calling him the father of our country. But let's not lie about him. And in turn, take and destroy who could be said to be the mother of our country, John Hanson. While George Washington was fighting the Revolutionary War, John Hanson was doing so much to promote and support our men that were fighting for independence. He was playing cat and mouse because he was so politically strong at the independence movement that the British wanted his head. Now, if you study John Hanson, you would find this out. But yet history says he was a political activist and nothing else. History does not say how much he actually did for the Revolutionary War and how vital and instrumental he was in the forming of our nation after the Revolutionary War. All they say is, well, I checked, was lately they say an activist in the Revolutionary War and the first president under the Articles of Confederation. That's all. They don't say nothing of all his accomplishments that he did in that 1 year, which was astounding. And just because there may be a possibility that his mother's African, I can't find that proof one way or the other. So all I could say is there may be. And that would even make it greater. Now, in 1903, the state of Maryland put in a statue in the capital of John Hanson because he was the first president of the United States of America. And he is there, his statue. So, bottom line is, who really is the first president of the United States of America? What perspective are you looking at? If you say nobody before the Constitution of the United States, which is a historical false, then you can say George Washington, because the country existed many years before that. Or you could say after the country was formed, John Hanson. That's your choice. The truth, or let's erase it and change it and make it what you want it to be. But if you're going to lie about history, what good are you as a nation? Our history is much more. This is Michael behind me. Now, Michael, can you please move? Move. So, thank you. And in a little bit, talk to Barbara. So, bottom line is, what is true? What is the perspective? If you want to say the country was formed on the Declaration of Independence or the end of the Revolutionary War, then John Hanson was president. If you want to say the country did not exist until the ratification of the Constitution, which is totally incorrect, then you can say George Washington was the first president. Say George Washington, father of our country, is correct. But then John Hanson would be considered the mother of this nation. For the liberties and freedoms that we experience, he fought so hard for himself, and he put so much at risk. So, the decision is yours to decide where do you want to begin the country at. I said the United States of America. When did the state colonies start calling themselves the United States of America, an independent nation, is the fact of what makes that statement true. The first president of the United States of America was John Hanson. Though it was under the Articles of Confederation and it was a Continental Congress, it still was the first president, because they realized right away that a president for the nation was needed, a leader for them to follow. Everybody. To have a focal point of direction. And that is what it's all about. Now there's the truth. Whether you want to accept it or not, choose your way of referring to it or not. But bottom line is, George Washington was the first congressional and first elected by the populace president. But he was the 8th president of the United States of America. John Hanson, who was elected by the Continental Congress, was the first president of the United States of America, and his was under the Articles of Confederation. And that is the difference. John Hanson was under the Articles of Confederation and the first president of the nation. George Washington, under the Constitution, was the first congressional president, but the 8th president of the nation. So, argue it. But that's what I am all about. The truth. What is real. What matters. Not just in history, but to you, each and every person of this nation. Yes, I am a presidential candidate for 2012. But that's something that you all have to decide, not me. I already sent the paperwork in. Thank you.